So I'm Theodora. I am here to show you our entire bleach collection. So we'll be sharing some formulas, we'll be talking about some techniques. And first I want to show you my hair muse, Jenna. So Jenna's going to showcase for you the finished result of using this technique that we're going to cover today. So Jenna has long, beautiful hair. This is all her hair. We have been doing a combination of balayage with some foil techniques over the past 6 months to really get her to this perfect, beautiful blonde. Our last technique was a little bit more diffusion so that the next time we touch up her highlights, it'll be a little bit more diffused even than it is now. So it's taking her transitionally from having a lot more of a bolder blonde look to being into a softer, more transitional blonde that you can integrate into a more fall color in like November or even October, depending on how often your highlight clients come in. So we're gonna showcase both our silver bleach and our balayage bleach today. I'm gonna let Jenna leave so that we can demo on our mannequin today. So I have my head sheets up here. I know some of it is blocked, some of it might not be easy to see, but I have over here the money piece and the top section, and the back is where we're focusing on using the balayage bleach and a balayage technique. And then here you'll see the way that I'm doing the sides, and we'll also be using the balayage bleach for the sides. So as far as it goes with the money piece and the section that goes to the crown, this is something you can just even incorporate just this top section and the two side sections to just do a partial. You can also integrate a few of the back sections that we'll be covering as well into your partial, just if you have a lot of people that like to wear their hair up and have long looks. At Maria Nila, we do make two different lighteners. We have a silver bleach. Our silver bleach contains real violet pigments that give it this beautiful tone, but they also will help to neutralize during the lifting process. This bleach will give you 7 levels of lift. It's a completely different formula and viscosity than our balayage bleach. So our balayage bleach is much powderier. It has a high concentration of kaolin clay in it. So that kaolin is actually going to encapsulate this section and dry on the outside so that we don't get any product transfer and we don't need the use of foils or paper or plastic in between any of our sections. Using Maria Nila bleaches, you want to make sure that you always weigh your formulas. They have different viscosities and different weights, so if you measure them, they actually won't blend properly. We have 5 different developers that you can use with our bleaches. I'm going to start with our 20 volume developer. We color coded all of our developers, and you'll also notice our bleach canisters are also color coded. Our bleach canisters are also recyclable. They're meant to be reused. And we also have recycled packaging for our developers as well. And like everything that's Maria Nila, we are completely animal friendly. We're vegan. We do not test on animals. We also climate compensate by planting trees in Nicaragua. So if you actually visit us at marianila.com, you can learn way more about all of the charity work that we do and all of the ways that we help Mother Earth. But those are all important pillars to who we are as a brand. And we think it's super important to talk about it in every education that we do. Because at Maria Nila, it's just important to be environmentally friendly, animal friendly, as it is to make beautiful hair and luxurious hair care products. So I mixed our 20 volume developer with our silver lightener. And I just want you guys to be able to see how nice our bowls are as well. They're nice and deep. You can use lots of product, especially if you're fast. Like if you're fast behind the chair, you love to have a big bowl of bleach. But keep in mind, after you start mixing your formula, it's chemistry, so it's going to start slowly dying out. So we do recommend that you mix a fresh bowl every 20 to 25 minutes to make sure that it's an active formula and everything will process at the same time. So I mixed about 30 grams of lightener and 60 grams of developer. We recommend a 1:2 mixing ratio, and I use this 1:2 mixing ratio, and you get this beautiful, nice viscosity. Let it settle for about a minute. And during the settling process, you'll notice that it will thicken up a tad bit more. If that's not your preferred viscosity, you can always change the mixing ratios. But keep in mind, if you change your mixing ratios, you're going to also change the aggressiveness of the lightener. So meaning that if you're going to change your mixing ratio to a 1 to a 1.5 because you like it a little bit thicker, it's going to make your bleach formula a little bit more aggressive than if you mixed it a 1:3. You'll get a looser formula. Maybe you like to do a lot of on the scalp lightening services. You can definitely use Maria Neela Silver Bleach on the scalp with a 20 or a 10 volume. So with that, I personally would recommend mixing about a 1:3 because you'll get a little bit of a looser formula, but it'll also be a gentler formula as well. So I definitely wanted you to see Jenna's beautiful hair because she's a real person, and it's always great to see how a technique is going to finish on real hair. But it's always great to be able to demo on a mannequin head because we're in a tight corner and we don't have the ability to use a real human in this kind of forum. So this is Josephine. She's one of my favorite mannequins because she's got really great hair. But Josephine did have a little bit of a partial highlight before today. So this first piece, this first section, you want to make sure that it's thin enough that you can actually see through it. So you have two choices with this section. If you really want it to be super bold, which is not what we did for Jenna this time, you could take it as a slice. I would prefer to have it a more diffused, softer finish. So I'm gonna take a fine weave and I'm gonna gently do just a little bit of teasing here, only because I want it to be a little diffused and I don't want it to have such a bold, striking look right at the front. So before I start the next weave, I just want you to see this beautiful formula and this really nice texture that our silver lightener has. And I haven't mentioned yet, but Emma is also moderating. So if you have any questions about our bleaches or just about our brand overall, please put them in the comments and Emma will let me know and we can talk about them. So I'm gonna do a small weave, not quite a baby light. So just to give you guys perspective, to me, this is not quite a baby light. I would call this like a medium to a fine. For me, just to give you perspective, what I would consider a baby light is like super, super micro. It would almost be invisible. So that would be more like a baby light for me. And you can also do a combination of weaves and slices, which I'm gonna do today. So as we start to get a little further up this section, I'm going to begin doing slices because I'm going to leave a little bit of depth here at the top, like a little veil, I like to call it. So by placing a few slice sections through here, you get a lot of really great striking lightness. And then by keeping that depth, it creates a really beautiful contrast that your client will be able to really see all of the beautiful work that you did. A lot of times we spend so much time on the back because there's so much hair in the back, and the client has no idea how hard we worked back there and how beautiful the work is because all they see is the front. I know for sure, but from doing Jenna's hair, that it's definitely like that. She gets completely obsessed with the hair in the front of her face, but then forgets that she's got this mountainous amount of hair in the back. So this is a 20 volume formula. So the amount of lightener that this mannequin had previously, for me, I'm okay with overlapping. If she had more delicate hair that was much lighter, more porous, I would not be overlapping. It would definitely break it off. So you want to be cautious about the pre-existing services that your client had. And like any lightener that you are using in the salon, always do a strand test on your client to make sure that there's nothing left behind in the hair that can affect the lightening service. So now that all of our clients are coming back from the beach or visiting their summer homes, going to up north cabins, things like that, a lot of times they can have heavy metals left behind in their hair that they don't usually have when they're at home. So usually when a client comes back from like a vacation or I haven't seen them for a while, I like to do a nice clarifying treatment to make sure that there's no chlorine left in their hair or any heavy metals are left in their hair whatsoever. Because you cannot mix a bleach service with any hair that still contains any heavy metals whatsoever. I personally love that a lot more striking dimensional color services are coming back into trend. I love to see hair color that is multi-dimensional and almost creates like a 3D look, especially when you take a picture of it. So here I'm going to do the same. Little bit of teasy lights. Now I'm going to thicken my section up a little bit right here, just because I took a thicker subsection. So the thicker you take of a section, the more product you're going to want to apply to make sure that you get good product saturation. Unless you want it to be a little less light. So if you're not looking to really give it a full amount of lightness, you just want it to be a little bit more subtle, you can use less product saturation. But because we're in the front and we're focusing on a money piece, I definitely want to make sure that it gets nice and light. So I'm going to use a lot of product to make sure that I get full saturation. And because I am using a high concentration of product, that's why I'm also just placing another foil on top of the underneath foil. Because by doing that, I don't have to disturb the foil underneath, and I don't have to risk my foils slipping or bleeding or having any demarcation line. You can also see just how easily the lightener applies to the hair. It's nice and thick, so it keeps the hair in place, making our job behind the chair so much easier. Also, using a good strong foil will help. I prefer a thicker foil so that I can also take thicker sections at times if I want to. Thicker foil also for me is good because I tend to just be a heavy-handed person in general. So I don't take any clients with sensitive scalps whatsoever. They've got to be a tough cookie to sit in my chair, which is also a reason why it's sometimes nice to work with mannequin heads, because they don't complain about the push, the pull, or my comb. So after my first two TZ lights, I'm gonna segue into doing some nice slices, just to give you guys an idea of the amount of hair that I'm taking per section. It's about that thick. So I'm gonna segue into my slices. Now my slices are gonna be thinner than my weaves, because if you take a slice that's too thick, you can end up with a stripier look, which actually is becoming more trendy right now. And for any of you guys that started doing hair in the 90s, you know what I'm talking about. Those thick, striking, slice, mohawk type techniques. We're definitely seeing a lot more of that happening. So it's always good to have a well-rounded technique base so that whoever comes in and sits in your chair, you're prepared to be able to give them the service that they're looking for. Just to give you guys a perspective of the thinness of that slice compared to the thickness of the weave. So although we weaved in the front, because those sections were thicker, it'll still have a bolder result than this slice. Slices are also great to do for time savers behind the chair. It's always about trying to find the best way to be efficient, but also give a great quality of service. For me, I love to choose a really high quality product because you get a great even lift. The silver bleach gives 7 levels of lift, even on color treated hair. I like to oftentimes clarify just in general too, even if it is for a client that I do know and I know what their hair has been through. I have a lot of clients with oily scalps and they don't often shampoo every day, or maybe even enough sometimes. So when the oil builds up on their hair, I find that it almost is like it's a full level darker. Like the bleach has to work harder to get through the sebaceous buildup. And then it makes my processing time longer and I almost lose a full level of lift. So a lot of times I'll even foil on wet hair. Like although balayage on wet hair is super, super popular right now, a lot of times I'll even foil. I'll do all of my technique on wet hair. And that can save time as well.
So Teddy, we have a question.
Great.
They want to know what kind of bleach you're using right now.
So this is the silver bleach. So this is the Maria Nila silver bleach. This bleach gives 7 levels of lift. It also has real violet pigments in it. And I stress the word real because a lot of times we're using bleaches behind the chair that give us like a beautiful filter during the lifting process. And what I mean by filter is it gives us this appearance of what the underlining tones will look like while they're neutralized, but it's not a true result when we take the lightener off the hair. So with Maria Nila's silver bleach containing real violet pigments, it actually neutralizes the underlining pigments during the lifting process. So you'll see the hair transition out of that yellow tone as it reaches the level 9 into a beautiful like buttery blonde. So some clients, like for instance, Emma, who we saw at the beginning, she's a natural level 8. So when I highlight Emma, I use our Balayage bleach, which only gives 6 levels of lift. And I'm left with hair that just has a slight underlining pigment. Whereas if I used her in foils with the silver bleach, I might not even need to use a toner because her natural level is light enough that the silver bleach will neutralize out those underlining pigments. So we've completed the front section of our face frame, and I'm just going to leave out this top triangle here. This is what's going to help to add depth and dimension.
So another question. Nancy here asks, so you don't tease the side when working on the money piece for diffusion?
I did. I teased the entire sections, the first 2 sections. 1, 2, I teased slightly, not a lot of tease, and I weaved. So also by weaving, it helps give that same kind of diffusion that your teasing will give as well.
Another question. Will it lift on colored hair level 2 to 5?
Yes, so it will definitely lift on dark shades as well. Keep in mind with dark shades, especially depending on the quality of hair color, I don't know what I'd also love to hear where you guys are from too. So definitely give us shout outs of what towns you're from. But in my world, post-COVID, we were having lots of issues with clients coming back with like Madison Reed hair color or box hair color, and it's been a big struggle trying to get all of that hair color out. So what I recommend doing first is a nice clarifying treatment, like an alkaline kind of clarifying treatment on those darker levels first, because that'll open up the cuticle a little bit and it'll help prep the hair for the lightening service. But the silver bleach on color treated hair, absolutely, it can lift in those darker shades. It may take a little bit longer. You may want to bump your developer up. So I started with 20. You may want to bump your developer up to 30. You can also use Olaplex as well. We did test our formulas with Olaplex. Just follow the manufacturer's recommendation and you should be fine. So I'm switching over to our balayage because I want to give a little bit more warmth to the finished result for this technique, because it is meant to be kind of a transition technique. So it's like the last sort of service before we reach the fall. So I'm pre-planning that when my clients come back in the fall, we're gonna go even rootier, give a little bit more depth to the color, and maybe even take it down a level or a half a level. I find that most of my color clients don't like to overall change their formulation during the fall. They would rather just keep the same formula and get a little less highlights, or maybe even just go a half a shade darker versus going more red or more auburn. But it all depends on your area. I'm here in Manhattan where people aren't always keen on going red for the fall. So here's the consistency of our balayage bleach. So it is a really nice creamy consistency, and you'll see as we start to apply how it's going to start to harden on the outside. But I love this consistency because it makes it really easy to apply.
So we have to do a shout out to Ohio.
Oh great, hi Ohio. I'm actually originally from Michigan. So I love the Midwest. The Midwest is the best.
So you mentioned a clarifying treatment. They want to know what you recommend.
I recommend anything that you can find that's a little bit alkaline. So to me, alkaline would be at like an 8 or a 9 on the pH scale. I am a hairdressing professional, so I prefer professional treatments like a Malibu. Like I love a Malibu seed treatment. But you can also use any kind of alkaline shampoo that you know of. That just happens to be the one that I prefer.
Does it have a bonder in it?
No, they don't have bonders. They don't. So you do have to be careful with a delicate type hair. But if you're that concerned about even an alkaline shampoo, I wouldn't recommend a bleach lightening service for that client. I also think it's important for us to note as well that Maria Nila's bleaches, when they are mixed, are at a 10.3 on the pH scale. So we do have a really nice, gentle, stable pH.
Now when you work with the balayage bleach, would you say that it's a clay bleach?
Absolutely. So our balayage bleach has a high concentration of kaolin clay. So you may have heard of kaolin before. I know other brands use it. I first heard of kaolin because it was in a purifying mask treatment that I used. So it has purifying benefits, it has anti-aging benefits, and it's calming and soothing. So it first gives us this really great texture, but it also provides anti-aging benefits during the lightening process. So you get a really great lift. You get 6 levels of lift with the balayage, but you also get the benefits of the calming and soothing anti-aging properties that the kaolin clay gives to the hair. Now here you have a couple of choices when you're balayaging. You have a couple of choices in the sense of how much product saturation you want to give the amount of lift or the amount of lightness that you want. So what I mean by that is if you want a lot of lift around these pieces, which I do because we're working around the face now, you want to make sure that the entire sections are completely saturated, which is why I'm flipping the section over on my balayage board to make sure that I'm going to get full saturation front and back. If I just wanted a more subtle lightness, I may only paint the side that's going to be reflective or seen. But right around this face frame, I want more lightness. So I'm fully saturating. And I think a lot of times that's something that we can forget using a balayage bleach is it is a thicker formula, so it does need to be worked in to make sure that we get a perfect saturation all the way through.
So we have people in Ontario.
Oh, Canada, again,
Yeah.
like so close to Detroit.
Yeah. So Ingrid here asked, why did you not do it like a V shape when you applied it?
So I didn't want to give that much depth here. When I get to the back, I'm going to do more of a V shape to give a little bit more depth through the back because I want to keep it a little darker in the back. I want a little more dimension. I want to see more variations between light and dark when I get to the back. Here in the front, I just wanted to have a more overall lighter appearance completely around the face so that when the client sees the hair, everything from here throughout looks really blonde and really bright, and it subtly transitions into a darker appearance. And then during their next service, like their fall color service, it'll be even more of a rooty transition. And in that service, I may through the sides do more of a V shape to give it a little bit more depth along the sides. And if I wanted to continue working up the head further as well, as I worked further up the head and less around the hairline, I would transition more into a V-shaped balayage.
Teddy, does the clay lightener, the balayage bleach, bleed into the other strands?
It does not, because that kaolin clay. So it's going to dry and encapsulate. So that's why I have no problem just dropping this next section down and not having any issues with product transfer. Which also, to me, I'm always looking for different ways that I can, in my own lifestyle, in my own salon practices, find the best way to be as environmentally friendly as possible. So for me, using less foil, using less plastic during my services will definitely help with that. Being environmentally friendly and being animal friendly are things that we really hone in on at Maria Nila. So I'm gonna do the same saturation here with my balayage. So again, the balayage gives 6 levels of lift. The balayage is also gonna give warmer tones because it doesn't contain those violet pigments. So the end result will have that warm underlining finish as well. I also did more teasing in the sides than I did around the money piece as well. So by doing more teasing at that root area, that's gonna also give a little bit more depth.
So Teddy, you gotta be completely honest now. Is this your favorite balayage board?
Actually, I'm telling you, it really is my favorite balayage board. And the last time I used this, I picked it up the wrong way. So on the back side, it's completely smooth. And on this side, it has texture to it. I really, really like the texture part of it. So it is my favorite balayage board. I like the size of it, especially because nowadays, if people don't have long hair, they're tending to get a lot of hand-tied extensions and things like that. So they have a lot of length to their hair. So it helps with that as well. One thing that I think is super important to mention about Maria Nila is we are a professional-only hair care brand, and we take professional hairdresser feedback very seriously. So when we're making these tools, like our balayage boards, when we're, like for instance, our developers are all color coded, they're also ergonomic. So I have tiny hands, like I'm a petite woman. One of my biggest complaints about hair care is or the hairdressing world is that I feel like a lot of the tools we create are for people with big hands, and I think a lot of women have small hands. So for instance, our developers are created that you can hold them with one hand and be able to pour and text or make a phone call with your other hand, because anytime we're in the back room, we're constantly multitasking. So we create tools for what a hairdresser needs behind the chair. So even by color coding, it makes it super easy. Like I know that I'm working with 30 volume right now, so if I accidentally pick up a purple bottle, I'm not gonna realize it, I'm gonna realize it right away. It's not gonna be too late where I have to pour a formula down the drain. So that also helps with our back bar costs as well. The fact that we have a 1-to-2 mixing ratio can also help with your back bar costs. That 1-to-2 mixing ratio extends the amount of powder that you need to use in your formula.
They want to know why you don't paint the board first. Because you're flipping it over.
Oh, because by the time I use it once, it's painted already. So when I get to this back section, I have two different ways that I like to do. Sorry, I positioned it for me, not for you. Sometimes I forget you're there. It feels like sometimes I'm talking to myself. So you have two different ways that you can paint in the back. I like to start from the bottom and work up, just because I think it's cleaner and easier for me, but it's also your preference. I've taken a V shape like this, but I alternate by visit. So this visit, I'm taking a V shape like this. My next visit, I'll go the opposite direction. That gives more dimension, and it also gives us a little bit of change in the amount of lightener we may use from visit to visit, meaning that clients aren't getting full treatments every single time they come in, unless maybe they're only coming once a year. But if you have a client who frequently comes in, especially for highlights to get touched up, I like to switch up the placement because it helps to give more dimension in the end result. I split my section into two. It helps to keep me a little bit more organized. As I get here to the back, I like to stop the back combing part of the service because I don't need as much diffusion back here. And I'm also going to do less application. So there's not going to be as much lightener being used. I'm also going to take thicker pieces in between. So I don't need as much diffusion because the thickness and the depth that I have between sections will give me that depth that the back combing would also give. I try to minimize the amount of back combing that I need, but it's also the way I was trained in balayage. So for me, it just kind of becomes second nature sometimes. So here I'm gonna do more of a V as I paint. And because I'm also in the back, I'm not going to be going to the back and to the front with the application. I'm also taking thinner sections here than I was in the front. So when I take a big section, that's when I'm really gonna make sure that I'm going in the front and the back and getting full product saturation. The thinner the section I have, I don't have to worry about that as much. And whether I want something more subtle or not. Do you guys find that you pick one technique and stick with that, or are you always changing it up? Sometimes for me, I struggle a little bit. I'll go to a class, I'll learn something new, and then for a week, I'm obsessed with that. And then all of a sudden I'll get in the weeds, and it's almost like I forgot anything new, and I find myself focusing on the typical first techniques I was ever taught. So I really try to spend a lot of time reinventing efficient ways that I can be faster behind the chair.
So comments on that, always changing up.
Good for you guys. That's why you're here right now. You're always looking for something new. So as I was saying, I'm going to take really thick, bigger sections here as I get to the back, or as I'm in the back. It's going to help give me more depth. I think the biggest thing for me is always trying to find what's going to be super efficient. So this is what I mean by a big thick section. So I'm not going to balayage all of this because I want to keep more depth. So I'm going to take a subsection through here. And again, these sections are thinner than they were along the sides. So along the sides, I only took 2 sections, and I did weave them, but they were thicker and they were bigger, and they had a lot more product saturation. And that product saturation is what is really going to give me the lightness that I need.
What developer are you using?
So here I'm using 30. So in the face frame in the front, I use the silver bleach with 20. So the silver bleach gives 7 levels of lift, and by putting it in the foils, it's going to process faster. So those front pieces, although I was only using 20, are going to have a cooler, lighter tone when finished. Whereas using the balayage, I'm going to have a warmer, softer result. So it's going to be a transitioning. It's going to be like a gradation of lightness in the front to where there'll still be lightness all over, but it'll be a softer, more subtle lightness through the sides and the back. But although the sides, even though I'm using 30 volume with the balayage bleach, the amount of product saturation I had in the sides will give me more lightness than it would with what I'm doing in the back. So the back will even be more subtle than in the front.
So we just had someone join in and ask you to go through why you do this technique. What do you want to achieve with this technique?
What I'm trying to achieve with this technique are soft transitional highlights from, this would be the service that you do, the last service before you take them into their fall hair color. So I want it to be bolder and brighter in the front and transition into softer, more gentle highlights in the back, more subtle highlights in the back and in the sides. So it'll go boldest and lightest in the front fringe area. Then the side face frame area will be lighter than the back. The back will still have lightness and dimension, but it'll be more subtle. And a lot of that subtleness will come from the pattern I'm choosing, but also the amount of product saturation. So the most product saturation is going on the ends, but that's mainly because this model hasn't had color all the way through the ends. Most people will already have color through or lightener through here, and I won't need to do that. So for the most part, it'll just be focusing through the new growth here if it's a client that's coming back. My goal is also to have an efficient, fast way to retouch a balayage service. I think it's really important for hairdressers to share techniques with one another that can help all of us be faster and more efficient behind the chair, because nobody wants to stress about running behind or have to take up an entire day to just dedicate to one client. I know Emma, who we have here today that's moderating for us, one of her biggest things was not spending a ton of time in the salon. So for her, if she's going to the salon, she doesn't want to have to spend 4 hours just getting her balayage done. So by creating beautiful, subtle, transitional highlights that you can do in an efficient time, gives you the opportunity to offer more services to more clients. Now, is anybody getting more requests, specifically from maybe some younger clientele, for bolder, more striking, more dimensional, like a more contrast type of end result? I always love to hear more about what trends are happening in different areas. because I have a regular client that I see about every 3 to 4 months. And the last time she came in for her highlights, she specifically asked for like a grungier, stripier end result, which I was excited to do, but it's also a big shift from what we have been doing for the past decade or so.
Wow, people from New York.
All right. What borough?
So Samantha here says that right now all my blondes are going back to their natural color.
Oh, that's okay though. What is worrisome is when they go back to their natural color and then they come back in a month and are like, oh my God, I'm so sick of being a brunette or a dark blonde, even though dark blondes think that they are brunettes. You know, like I want to go back to my highlights, and then you have to lift out all of that hair color and it becomes a corrective color service, really, right? When you're dedicating that much time and you're doing that much permanent color remover, it totally becomes a corrective color service. So for those clients, I always like to start doing that in a semi-permanent way. So my first tint back, I don't know if people still call it that, but I always called it a tint back when you take somebody from their blonde to their natural color. I prefer to first do that semi-permanently, so that way if they decide it wasn't for them, it was a super big mistake, it'll wash out faster, it'll be more gentle on the hair, and you don't have to spend a lifetime trying to pull that color out, and your client also doesn't have to worry about the integrity of their hair. So we have these color refresh masks. There's so many different things that you can do with color refresh. You can take somebody back from a blonde. We have one that's called Cacao. Cacao is a level 6 natural. So you can take them back from their level 9 to a level 6 using Cacao, and it'll last about 10 shampoos. So that gives them enough time to decide whether or not it really is the type of hair color that they want to wear right now. If they do decide that they're really happy to go back to their natural color and they feel really good about it, then you can use the color refresh masks to fill for that client. We have 15 different shades. They all come with a level and a tone, and when it's relevant, they'll have a secondary tone as well. So for instance, the Pearl Silver. So this is just a really light, there's no level, violet natural. So the reason I have these out is I also like to tone with these two. So you can tone with them, you can tint back with them, you can fill with them. You can also just do creative pieces, like we have a bright red or a pink pop. We've got a peach, we have a bright copper, which is a level 7, 3/4, a gold copper. So you can actually even just do accent pieces with it. They're fun for that. But you can also just send them home with your client to maintain their color as well. And because we have 15 different shades that go across all levels, like we go as dark as black and we go as light as Pearl Silver. We also have a white mix that is like a clear, so you can mix them all together. You can create your own formulas with them. So great tool for behind the chair if you're gonna do tint backs, if you're gonna fill with them. You can also color balance with them. So if you have a client who maybe has a really delicate porosity of their hair and they need a nourishing treatment, you can also rebalance their color using the color refresh masks and forego using an alkaline toner, which will give a little more delicateness to the fabric of the hair. So you can get a conditioning treatment plus a color service out of it because they are semi-permanent. They have different intensities as well. So for instance, the Pearl Silver looks like this. But the Cool Cream, which is a level 8 1, so a level 8 ash, looks like this.
Do they cover gray?
They do not cover gray because they are just semi-permanent and they do not open the cuticle at all. They do not contain ammonia. They do not contain ethylamine. So you need something like ammonia or ethylamine to be able to cover gray. They do not have that. They are also not alkaline. They are at a pH of a 5 to a 5.5, which is the same pH as our hair and our skin. And because of that, you will also need to follow up with a conditioner after you use the mask. So you'll actually use the mask the same way that you would a toner. You would shampoo, rinse, apply your mask. You want to make sure that it's completely saturated. Then you would rinse the mask completely and follow up with a conditioner. You'll always need to follow up with a conditioner to close that cuticle and trap the color in. If you want to get it out faster, it'll shampoo out between 4 and 10 washes. So obviously the more pigment, it'll last longer than the lighter pigments. If you want to shampoo it out faster, you clarify it out. If you lighten it out, if you put bleach over it, it's going to take a lot longer to get it out than if you just used a nice clarifier. So always clarify them out. But they're super easy to use because you have the great numbering system. So you can intermix and create your own shades to perfectly match. We have some fabulous educators that do great postings with our Color Refresh mask, as well as our bleach. So if you're not following us on social media, we have 2 different social medias. We have at Maria Nila Stockholm, which is for everyone. And then we also have a professionals page, which is for you, the hairdresser. So that's Maria Nila Professional. On our professional page, you'll find all of our Color Refresh formulas that we share amongst each other. You'll see different highlighting techniques that we do with our bleaches. And you'll also see firsthand all of the new great products that we have coming out. We'll be teasing you on that channel all of the time. You'll also find at Maria Nila Professional any education offerings that might be happening. We post those in our stories. So Maria Nila Professional for all of our hairdressing professionals. I saw somebody comment about the amazing smells. We actually take our aromas and our fragrances very, very seriously. We don't want them to be overpowering. We don't want them to take over the whole aroma of the human, but we want them to be pleasant and also spark interest, right? Like fragrance gives us memories. It has so many different things that it can do. It can make us happy. But you'll notice that we have 15 different Color Refresh masks. They all have a different scent. But when you mix them together, the scents are still pleasant. And the same thing with our shampoos, our conditioners, and our entire styling range. They all have their own aromas that blend together. Whereas with our lighteners, our bleaches, they don't have an aroma. I was gonna smell it for you guys, but you guys can't smell what I'm smelling. I forgot about that. But they actually don't have an aroma. So it's a really comfortable experience if you or your client has a sensitivity to the smells in our professional product, our chemical smells, because we've buffered out all of those so that they're aroma free. They're also dust free. I just want, before we have to start wrapping up, I want to give you guys an up close look at the lifting process so that you can really see the lightness that's happening here. So you can already see, even with that balayage bleach that's just 6 levels of lift that hasn't been processing for that much time, it's already getting light. And I want you guys to also see the silver lightener during the lifting process. And this can process for up to 50 minutes. After about 50 minutes, it dies out a little bit. If you haven't reached your desired level by 50 minutes, mix a fresh bowl and just overlay right over your old lightener. You don't have to take it out. just right in the same foil, which is also why I like to double my foils, because especially on darker hair or maybe on those like level 2 colored hair, you can lighten right over the old bleach. It just reactivates it. Mix a fresh bowl, layer it right over. In about 20 to 30 minutes, you'll be super, super blonde, because you will get a true 7 levels of lift. So if it has to work a little harder to go through that hair color, you'll notice that after reapplying, just reactivates it and speeds it right back up. And then you can still get that really nice, perfect lift. But I believe this has probably been processing, my guess would be about 20 to 30 minutes. So in the next 20 minutes or so, we would even see the silver bleach lighten up a little bit more. And this was 20 volume. I can show you our balayage over here. You can see how nice and light this is getting as well. And this is what I mean about making sure that on these thick sections, I really wanted these to get super light and super bright. So I made sure there was tons of lightener in there. You can see how beautiful and light this is getting. It gives just a beautiful, soft transition along the sides versus the product saturation that we have through here. This is going to be a much more subtle finish. So about this time, we're gonna have to start wrapping up, but I wanna make sure that I've answered everybody's questions. So please feel free to let Emma know any other questions that you have. Just a quick recap about the entire lightener line. We have a silver bleach, we have a balayage bleach. The silver bleach is 7 levels of lift and has violet pigments that will neutralize during the lifting process. Our balayage bleach is a clay lightener that will give 6 levels of lift. It dries on the outside, but it stays active on the inside to keep the lightening process throughout the whole processing time. They both are recommended of 1 to 2 mixing ratio. You can adjust the mixing ratios to create the viscosity of your choice. If you use more developer, it's going to be a gentler lift, whereas if you use less developer, it'll be a more aggressive lift. They are all dust-free, they are aroma-free, they are climate compensated, they are animal-friendly, they're environmentally friendly, and they're vegan. And most important, they were made by hairdressers for hairdressers. It is a professional line. Oh my God, I almost forgot to tell you about the Silver Shot. This is the hero product of the line. So we have a pH balancing Silver Shot. This is a finishing treatment. So you use this as the last treatment in the shampoo bowl. This also contains violet pigments. So this is the take home. So you use it in the salon, you shampoo, you tone, then you use the Silver Shot. So this one's the Silver Shot. This was the Cool Cream, the 8.1, and this was the Pearl Silver, the 0.2. So it does have a concentrated pigment of violet in it, but those violet pigments will not deposit until you leave it on for at least 3 minutes. So if you have warm blondes, you can still use it. It's gonna condition. It's not a toner though. So it doesn't have as much pigment as a toner would. So if you need to tone, you should tone. Most importantly, this is gonna shut that cuticle layer down. It's gonna trap the color surface in. It's gonna make it last longer. Then when the client goes home, they're gonna use this after their first shampoo in place of their conditioner. Because again, it's gonna trap the cuticle layer down. It's gonna seal the cuticles down and prevent any of that toner from falling out faster than it's meant to. So it's like an insurance policy. It's a nice gift to give to your client at the end of their service. It's also a great way to link them back to the beautiful quality of hair products that you're using behind the chair. A lot of times our clients have no idea that we dedicate so much of our income to actually making sure that they get the best quality of products. So this really just goes to show that you're using a top tier premier product behind the chair. So thank you guys so much. I hope that I was able to answer all of your questions. And please make sure that you become our friends on Facebook and as well as Instagram.